They voted. They cheered. They believed. A new future was coming. No more rules from Brussels. More control for Britain. More jobs, more money, more pride. But now, after 6 long years, things look very different. The prices are high, the shelves are empty, and the dreams, they feel broken. Some blame Europe, some blame Putin, but deep inside, many are asking the same question. Did we make a mistake? This is the true story of Brexit, of regret, of blame, of silence, at the top, and of a country trying to find its way again. Chapter 1. The Vote That Changed Everything. It started with a simple question. Should the United Kingdom stay in the European Union, or should it leave? The year was 2016. The people were tired. Some said the EU controlled too much. Others believed Britain could be stronger, alone. June 23, 2016. A day that would change history. A day that would divide the country. Millions of people went to vote, old and young, rich and poor, some with hope, some with fear. And then, the result came. Leave. 52% voted to leave the European Union. Only 48% said stay. The country was shocked. Even the leaders who supported leave looked surprised. There was no plan, no idea what would happen next. Prime Minister David Cameron resigned. He had supported staying in the EU. He didn't want to lead the country into the unknown. People celebrated in the streets. Flags waved. Cheers rose. "This is our Independence Day," some shouted. But others cried. They felt the future was slipping away. They feared for their jobs, their families, their country. And so, the Brexit journey began. At first, it was just talk, years of debate. What kind of deal should the UK make with Europe? Should it be a soft exit or a hard one? Nothing was clear. Politicians argued. Prime ministers came and went. Theresa May tried to find a way. She failed. Boris Johnson promised strength. He pushed Brexit through. Finally, on January 31st, 2020, Britain officially left the European Union. A moment in history. Big headlines, big speeches, but behind the words, silence. A deep, uncertain silence. What would this really mean for people? 1 year later, Britain also left the EU single market. This was serious. Before, there were no borders for trade, no extra checks, no big costs. Now, every truck crossing into Europe had to stop, check, pay, wait. Small companies were hit hard. Food deliveries were delayed. Some businesses closed. But the worst was still to come. The British people hoped for a better life. More control, more money, more pride. But things began to change. Prices started to rise. Jobs became harder to find. Europe felt further away. And slowly, something else began to rise. Regret. People started saying, "We didn't know it would be like this. We were wrong. If we could go back, we would vote differently. A new word appeared in the news: Bregret. Brexit plus regret equals Bregret. In the following chapters, we will see why the economy suffered, why food got more expensive, why the British government blames Putin, and why many believe the real problem is Brexit itself. But for now, let's stop at this moment in time. A vote, a nation divided, a future uncertain, and a question that still echoes across the land. What have we done? Chapter 2. A dream turns cold. It was supposed to be a new beginning, a better future, a stronger Britain. That's what the people were told. Once we leave the EU, things will be better. No more rules from Brussels. We will take back control. Those words were everywhere, in speeches, in newspapers, on big red buses. The message was clear. Brexit will fix everything. But it didn't. Instead, the dream began to freeze. Slowly, quietly, like a cold wind moving through the country. At first, people didn't notice much. Life felt the same. Shops were open, streets were busy, the flag was still flying. But then, problems began to appear. Not loud, not fast, but real. Goods from Europe were delayed. Fresh food took longer to arrive. Prices went up. A fruit seller in London said, "My strawberries come late now," and they cost more. A factory owner in Birmingham said, "My machines are stuck at the border." Small problems became big headaches. And the government? They stayed silent. "No, this is not Brexit's fault," they said. "This is normal. This is progress." But the people? They weren't so sure. What happened to the promised money? What happened to better hospitals? What happened to control? The cold wind blew stronger. Then came 2020. The world stopped. COVID-19 hit. Businesses closed. Streets emptied. People stayed home. Everyone suffered. But in Britain, it felt worse. Why? Because Brexit was already shaking the economy. And now, a pandemic pushed it harder. Trade was stuck. Companies couldn't plan. And the government was still confused. January 2021. Britain left the EU single market. Now, real changes began. Every export had new papers. Every border had new rules. Every business had new problems. Big shops like Marks and Spencer closed food stores in Europe. Why? Because fresh food couldn't travel fast enough. One manager said, "Our cheese doesn't arrive fresh anymore. It just rots." This was not the Brexit people wanted. And then came the energy crisis. Gas prices exploded. Electricity bills jumped. And again. The government said, "This is not about Brexit. It's because of the war." But people asked, "Really? Only the war? Didn't the problem start before?" A mother in Manchester said, "My bill doubled." And my salary? It didn't move. Pain was growing, frustration rising. But hope was falling. In just 2 years after Brexit, Britain had 3 prime ministers, one after another. All promised change. All failed. People lost trust, lost patience, lost money. The dream of Brexit? It was melting away. And yet, no one at the top wanted to say it out loud. No one said, "We made a mistake." No one said, "This is hurting us." They blamed COVID. They blamed Putin. They blamed the global economy, but not Brexit. The cold wind turned to ice, and the dream became a shadow. People now whispered, "What if we were wrong? What if this was a mistake?" In the next chapter, we will dive deeper. We will see how Brexit changed everyday life, for workers, for families, for businesses, and how simple things became complicated, because sometimes it's not the loud crashes that break a nation, it's the slow cracks that no one sees until it's too late. Chapter 3. Life after Brexit. They said life would be easier. They said we would be free. They said it was the right choice. But what really happened? Let's take a walk through Britain. After Brexit. Imagine you are a truck driver. You used to drive from London to Paris. Easy, fast, no borders. Goods moved freely. But now, stop here, show your papers, open the truck, wait for checks. More time, more cost, more stress. One driver said, "I used to make 2 trips a day. Now I can barely finish one." That's Brexit. Now, imagine a small cheese company. They sell British cheese to Germany. Or they used to. Today, the rules are different. Every cheese needs special papers. Every box must be inspected. It's slow, it's expensive, and customers, they don't want to wait. So the company stops exporting. Jobs are lost. Dreams are broken. That's Brexit. What about food in supermarkets? Let's look there. Before Brexit, food came in quickly, fresh, cheap, easy. Now, there are delays, new taxes, customs checks, tomatoes, apples, fish. Everything costs more. A family of 4 spends £210 more per year on food, and that's just the start. A father says, "My kids love strawberries. Now they are too expensive." That's Brexit. And workers? Many workers from Europe left the UK. They were nurses, builders, farmers. They helped the country. But after Brexit, many felt unwelcome. They left. Now there are not enough workers. Hospitals are slower. Farms lose crops. Restaurants close early. A cafe owner says, "I don't have staff. I clean, cook, and serve alone." That's Brexit. The government promised more control. But control doesn't fill the fridge. Control doesn't pay the rent. People are starting to feel it, deep in their pockets, deep in their lives. In 2022, inflation hit 11.1%, the highest in 41 years. Prices up, wages flat, families suffering. But when asked, the government says, it's the war in Ukraine, it's COVID, it's not Brexit. But is that true? Many economists say no. They say Brexit made things worse. It added new problems and made old problems bigger. Let's not forget the businesses. In 2020, over 27,000 UK companies exported to the EU. In 2021, only 18,000. That's a massive drop. That's thousands of businesses, struggling or closing. Marks and Spencer closed 11 food shops in France. Why? The food didn't arrive fresh anymore. Customs were too slow. Their answer? Close the doors. That's Brexit. And what about young people? Students? Dreamers? Before, they could study in Europe easily. Now, it's harder. More papers, more rules, more limits. A student from Liverpool said, I wanted to study in Spain. Now, it's too complicated. A door was open. Now, it's closed. That's Brexit. Day by day, the effects grow. Not with explosions, but with small, quiet cracks. In homes, in businesses, in hearts. People look around and whisper, this is not what we were promised. This is not the better life we were told about. They feel lost. They feel lied to. But they're still waiting for someone to say, we were wrong. In the next chapter, we'll hear the voices at the top. Politicians, leaders, the ones who gave the promises. And we'll ask, why are they blaming Putin instead of looking in the mirror? Stay with me. The story gets deeper. Chapter 4. The blame game begins. The pain was real. The prices were rising. The shelves were emptier. The people were angry. So someone had to take the blame. But who? The government had a choice. Tell the truth, or point the finger at someone else. They chose the second. It's not Brexit, they said. It's not our fault. It's Putin. Yes, Vladimir Putin. The war in Ukraine became the perfect excuse, a distraction, a cover story. In November 2022, Jeremy Hunt, the UK finance minister, stood in front of Parliament and said, "This recession is made in Russia." He said it clearly, confidently, like it was a fact. But was it? The war did hurt Europe. It raised energy prices. It made food and fuel more expensive. That part was true. But Britain's problems started before the war. Way before. Let's go back. Brexit happened in 2020, the single market exit in 2021, and even before the war, businesses were already suffering. Food prices were already rising. Trade was already slowing. Workers were already leaving. So, can we blame it all on Putin? Of course not. But blaming Putin was easy. It worked in headlines. It gave people a name, a face, the enemy from far away, not the politicians at home. Meanwhile, surveys told a different story. In August 2022, a study asked big UK companies, "What was your biggest problem this year?" More than 80% said, Brexit. Not the war, not COVID, Brexit. Customs delays, new paperwork, extra costs, lost markets, that's what they said. One company owner shared, "We can't export like before. It's too hard, too slow, too expensive." And still, the government said nothing. Or worse, they repeated the story. It's Putin. It's global. It's not us. Why? Because admitting the truth was dangerous. It would mean they were wrong. It would mean they broke the promise. And in politics, that's a deadly move. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said, "I believe Brexit brings big opportunities." He said, "Under my leadership, we won't follow EU rules again." But behind closed doors, whispers said something else. Reports came out. Newspapers said some UK officials were quietly trying to make a new deal with the EU, something like Switzerland's deal, to get access to the EU market again. Wait. What? If Brexit is good, why go back? Why ask Europe for a new deal? The answer? Regret. But in secret. The government didn't want to say it, but they knew. Brexit was hurting the country, and still, they kept pointing the finger at Putin. Let's stop for a second. Imagine you're standing in a storm. Rain is pouring. Wind is wild. You're cold, wet, lost. And someone says, "Don't worry, it's not the storm. It's the birds flying above." Would you believe them? This is the kind of excuse many people heard. And slowly, they stopped listening. In the next chapter, we will follow the numbers. We'll go deeper into the economy, inflation, recession, lost jobs, and we'll ask, how much pain can one decision bring to a whole nation? Stay with me. The cracks are getting bigger. Chapter 5. The economy breaks down. The numbers don't lie. They tell a cold, hard story. A story of loss, pain, and broken promises. This is the story of Britain's economy after Brexit. Let's begin with this. People are poorer, not a little, but a lot. In 2022, British families were hit hard. Prices went up, salaries stayed the same, and hope disappeared. The UK's Budget Office said living standards will fall by 7.1% in 2 years. That's the biggest drop since 1956. Yes, since the 1950s. Let's talk about income. In 2022 to 2023, real income dropped by 4.3%. Then in 2023 to 2024, it dropped again by 2.8%. People were earning less, but paying more for food, for gas, for everything. One mother said, My fridge is half full, but my wallet is empty. And inflation? In October 2022, inflation reached 11.1%, the highest in 41 years. Prices exploded. Bread, milk, cheese, electricity, fuel, rent. Everything got more expensive, too fast, too high. But people's paychecks didn't grow, so they suffered. A man in Leeds said, "I work more hours, but my money buys less." At the same time, interest rates went up. The Bank of England said, "We must fight inflation." So they raised rates, again and again. But higher interest rates make borrowing harder. People with loans, people with mortgages, suddenly had to pay more. Businesses slowed down. People stopped spending. The economy froze. And that's not all. Let's talk about trade. The EU was Britain's biggest trading partner. Close, simple, cheap. But after Brexit, new rules made it difficult. Delays, taxes, paperwork, exports dropped. Imports became slower. Small companies gave up. Marks and Spencer closed food stores in France. Why? Because the food arrived too late. Fresh turned into waste. That's not success. That's a silent disaster. Now look at the big picture. In 2023, the UK economy shrank by 1.4%. Shrank, not grew. A shrinking economy means less money, less jobs, less support. The government had fewer choices, so what did they do? They cut spending. They raised taxes. In November 2022, they announced £25 billion in new taxes, £30 billion in spending cuts. The message was clear. We are broke. And yet, other countries were doing better. Germany, France, Italy, even after the pandemic, even during the war in Ukraine, their economies started to recover. But not Britain. The UK was the only G7 country whose economy was still smaller than before COVID. Why? One answer kept coming back: Brexit. But the leaders stayed silent, or blamed someone else. Still, the facts kept shouting. A quiet storm was growing. People were cold in winter, hungry in summer, tired all year. Some skipped meals, others stopped heating their homes. A retired teacher said, "I survived wars. I survived sickness. But now I can't survive my own bills." And yet the government says things will get better. But when? How long can people wait? How much more can they lose? In the next chapter, we will hear the people, their regrets, their voices, their truth. Because when leaders stay silent, the people start to speak. Stay with me. The regret is growing louder. Chapter 6. The voices of regret. At first, they were silent, too proud, too confused, too tired. But now, they are speaking, loud and clear. We made a mistake. These are the voices of regret. 6 years ago, they voted leave, with hope, with anger, with dreams. They wanted change. They wanted control. They wanted something better. But what did they get? Higher prices, lower income, more problems. In 2022, a big survey was done by a group called YouGov. They asked the British people, "What do you think about Brexit now?" The answer shocked everyone. 56% said leaving the EU was a mistake. Only 32% still supported it. And even more surprising, 1 in 5 people who voted leave said, "I regret it." A man in Birmingham said, "I voted to leave. Now I can't afford to heat my house." A woman in Bristol said, "I thought Brexit would help my business. It almost destroyed it." A student said, "I lost my chance to study in Europe. For what?" These are not just numbers. These are real people, with real stories and real pain. Newspapers started using a new word, Bregrit. Brexit plus regret equals Bregret. It became a headline. It became a hashtag. It became a feeling, a national feeling. Even the media changed tone. More questions, more doubt, less celebration. One famous journalist said, "People were promised a golden future. What they got was an empty fridge." That hit home. And what about young people? They didn't vote in 2016. Many were too young. But now, they live with the consequences. They can't study easily in Europe. They can't work across borders. They feel blocked. A 20-year-old said, "My future was decided before I could vote." And it wasn't a good decision. Meanwhile, businesses are closing, jobs are disappearing. Families are choosing between food and rent. And yet, the leaders don't say the word regret. They avoid it. They twist the story. They say, "This is just a phase. This is global. This is not our fault." But the people know. They feel it every day, in their homes, in their wallets, in their hearts. In London, a shop owner said, "I used to believe them. Now I believe my receipts." In Manchester, a nurse said, "We lost so many workers from Europe. Now we are short-staffed and tired." In Cornwall, a fisherman said, "I thought we'd have more fish. Now we can't even sell them to Europe." These are not political debates. These are daily realities. And still, there is no apology, no plan to fix things, no way back. Or is there? Some officials are whispering, talking to Europe, trying to build small bridges, but it's slow and quiet, because saying it out loud would mean we were wrong. And that's a hard thing to say for any politician. So now the voices grow louder, not just from the people, but from companies, from schools, from experts. They all say one word: enough. In the next chapter, we'll go behind the scenes, to secret meetings, to quiet deals, and ask, is Britain trying to return to Europe without admitting it? The truth is closer than you think. Stay with me. Chapter 7. Behind Closed Doors. Not every deal is made in the light. Some are whispered. In quiet rooms. Behind closed doors. This is one of those stories. In public, British leaders stood tall. We left the EU, they said, and we will never go back. Strong words, clear voices, but behind the scenes. A different story was starting. In November 2022, a shocking report appeared in the Times. It said, UK officials are talking to the EU. They want a new trade deal, something like what Switzerland has. Wait, what? Let's understand. Switzerland is not in the EU, but it has a special agreement. It can trade freely with EU countries. No big checks, no big costs. But there's a catch. Switzerland must follow many EU rules, and it must pay the EU money. So why would the UK want this? Didn't they leave the EU to avoid the rules, to stop the payments? So why go back? The answer is simple. The economy is hurting. Trade is down. Companies are struggling. People are angry. And the government? They are looking for a way out. But quietly. Because if they admit it, they must say the hardest words. We were wrong. The Times report caused a storm. People asked questions. Is the UK really planning a deal? Are we going back to EU rules? Prime Minister Rishi Sunak rushed to speak. He said, "No. That report is false. We will never agree to follow EU rules again." But not everyone believed him. One expert said, if they're not talking to Europe, then why are EU leaders meeting UK officials again? Another said, you don't build bridges unless you want to cross. So, what's really happening? It seems the UK wants to return to the EU market, not as a full member, but as a quiet partner. They want free trade, less paperwork, less problems. But they don't want to say it, because if they do, people will ask, why did we leave in the first place? This is the trap. You leave the house, then ask to use the garden, but the owner says, only if you follow my rules. And now, you are outside, but still under control. That's what many fear, that Britain will become a rule taker, not a rule maker. Still, the pressure is growing. Big companies want a deal. Small businesses want relief. People want cheaper food and fewer delays. So the government keeps talking. Carefully, quietly, They call it technical discussions. They say it's just cooperation. But the truth? They want back in just a little. And the EU? They are watching, waiting. They know Britain is in trouble, but they also know the rules. No deal is free, no access without payment, no benefits without conditions. If the UK wants back, even a little, they must play by EU rules. That's the price. So now, both sides play the game. Smiles in public, talks in private, behind closed doors. Something is happening, and the big question remains. Will the UK return to Europe through the back door? In the next chapter, we look at the man in charge, Rishi Sunak, the Brexit believer, the Prime Minister who says, everything is fine. But is he telling the truth, or just holding on to power? The silence is breaking. Let's hear what comes next. Chapter 8. Denial at the Top. He looked calm. He smiled on camera. He spoke with confidence. But the country was breaking, and he knew it. This is the story of Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of Denial. He became Prime Minister in October 2022. Britain was tired of change, tired of chaos. He was the 5th Prime Minister since 2016. Yes, 5 leaders in 6 years. David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and now Rishi Sunak. Every one of them touched by Brexit, and everyone failed. But Sunak promised something different. He said, I believe in Brexit. I believe it brings big opportunities. I will make it work. Big words. But people had heard them before. Soon after taking power, he faced hard choices. The economy was shrinking, people were angry, businesses were closing, and some officials wanted to talk to the EU to make trade easier. But Sunak said, no. He told the public, we will never accept EU rules again. Brexit is the right path. Was he being honest, or just protecting himself? Let's remember. In 2016, Sunak supported Brexit. He told people to vote leave. He said it would make Britain stronger. But now, the results were clear. Prices were up. Trade was down. Regret was growing. So, what did he do? He stayed silent. He avoided the hard truth. He said, it's not Brexit, it's the war, it's the global crisis. But the people knew better. And still, he refused to change direction. Even when reports showed secret talks with the EU, he said, they're wrong. There are no such plans. But experts disagreed. One economist said, the Prime Minister is in denial. The country is in pain, and we need solutions, not slogans. So why the denial? Why not admit the truth? Because admitting it would be political suicide. He would lose support. He would lose power. And in politics, power means everything. But there's a cost. While Sunak protects his image, people lose jobs, families lose savings, students lose futures, and all the while he smiles for the camera. He says, "Trust me, things will get better." But for many, they're only getting worse. Let's look at one moment. In Parliament, a lawmaker asked, "Prime Minister, do you still believe Brexit was a good idea?" He answered, "Yes, and I stand by my choice. No doubt, no regret, no room for change." That was his answer, and that was his message. But behind the scenes, some say he knows. He knows the damage. He sees the numbers. He hears the voices, but he can't say it. Not yet, because the truth would cost him everything. So, the denial continues. At the top, in public, on every stage, but cracks are showing, even inside his own party, even in his own team. How long can he hide it? How long can he pretend? In the final chapter, we face the last question. What now? Can Britain repair the damage? Is there a way back? Or is it too late? The end is near, but the story is not over. Stay with me for the last chapter. Chapter 9. What comes next? The storm has passed, but the sky is still dark. Now the country asks, what comes next? Can Britain fix what was broken? Or is it too late? Let's be honest. The damage is real. Trade is down. Prices are up. Trust is lost. The dream of Brexit? It's cold. It's distant. It's fading. And yet, the story is not finished. Some voices say, we must go back to the EU. Others say, no, we must move forward alone. The country is still divided, just like in 2016. But now, with more pain and less hope. Behind the scenes, quiet talks continue. Officials meet. Rules are discussed. Trade deals are explored. But nothing is clear. Nothing is promised. Because no one wants to say the words, "We failed." Let's talk about the people. They are tired. They are confused. They are waiting. A man in Liverpool said, "We can't change the past, but we must fix the future." A woman in Glasgow said, "My son deserves better. He shouldn't suffer because of bad decisions." These voices are growing louder, more honest, more real. And the leaders? They are running out of excuses, running out of stories, running out of time. They blamed the EU. They blamed COVID. They blamed PUTIN. But now, who is left to blame? There are a few options on the table. A new deal with the EU, like Switzerland. Close trade. Less control. Some rules. A second vote. A chance to rejoin the EU. But risky, divisive, uncertain. Do nothing. Stay alone. Try to survive. Hope for the best. Which path will Britain take? No one knows. But time is running. The economy needs direction. The people need answers. and the world is watching. One economist said, "Every day we wait, we fall further behind." Another said, "Other countries are growing. We are standing still." So again, we ask, what comes next? Will there be courage or more denial? Will leaders speak the truth or protect their image? Will the people be heard or forgotten? The story of Brexit was never just about Europe. It was about identity, pride, control. But today, the new story is about something else: recovery, reality, responsibility. In the end, no one knows the future. Not the experts, not the leaders, not even the people. But one thing is clear. The road ahead will not be easy. It will take time. It will take honesty. It will take unity. And maybe, just maybe, the country will find its way. Until then, the question remains, what comes next? We'll all be watching and waiting.